One of the biggest pickups of this offseason wasn't a wide receiver, it wasn't a running back. It was on the offensive line where the big uglies get down. And I've got one of those big uglies ready to talk to you. And man, is it a good one.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? Welcome back in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host. This is Locked On West Virginia, baby, where we're talking football again today. And you know it's about time to report. It's about time for that summer, that fall. That time of year it's less than 100 days away. And so I thought, you know what, man, we've had Jalen on. We've had other people on. We've had a few transfers on this year. But I haven't had many of the big uglies on except for one other one. So, you know, that's my favorite position group, guys. So that's what we're going to get into today as Eastern Michigan, Mississippi State, even go back to Colorado. This guy has had one hell of a journey out of Cherry Creek, man. Carson Lee, what's up, my dude?
What's going on, man? How are you?
Doing well. So saw you posted that picture today. You were heading into Morgantown. Obviously, the report date's on the 28th, right?
Yes, sir. No, 27th on Tuesday.
27th. Okay,
yes,
so Monday. Or
yep.
I mean Tuesday.
Yes.
Tuesday. So obviously it's close. How excited are you, man? And congratulations, you're a Mountaineer.
Yeah, I can't wait. You know, it's kind of funny. I was one of the first things when I was sitting down at dinner with Rich Rod the first night of my visit is I've listened religiously to Pat McAfee since about 2020, and so I've heard about all the good, the bad, and the ugly about West Virginia, and so I really felt coming on my visit that I had a pretty good understanding about the town, the fans, and what Coach Rich Rod's trying to bring back here, just from listening to him over the last couple of years, and so. It was a pretty easy decision, to be completely honest with you. You know, kind of being out in the wind in the transfer portal. There's not a lot of times you know anything about a lot of the programs. You might know a coach or something like that, but I felt like I truly knew a good amount of information about West Virginia and the type of program I'd be a part of, the fan base, and all that kind of stuff. So I cannot wait. I'm absolutely fired up.
So you posted a picture. One of the people, Brian Ray, in the chat saying you posted a pic after you came through the tunnels in Bluefield today.
Yes, sir.
What did you think about your drive through West Virginia? Is it different from the part of the country you're from?
Completely different. Yeah, you know, I grew up in Colorado. I actually grew up on the western side of the state till I was going into my sophomore year of high school.
It's Colorado.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's how I've always said. You know, it's kind of funny you say that. When I transferred to Mississippi State, a bunch of the guys, that was one of the things they gave me a bunch of crap for, is the way that I pronounce the state that I'm from or whatever. But but no. So I grew up in a place there called Grand Junction, which is about 20 miles east of the Utah border. Grew up in a farm town. My great grandma and grandpa had the biggest dairy farm in between Denver and Salt Lake, and so I grew up in a farm town. And you know, did a lot of that stuff, and ended up moving to Denver going into my sophomore year of high school. But so growing up around the mountains, you kind of get an idea when you're coming in with the rolling hills and stuff. But it's absolutely beautiful, just all the greenery and stuff that you drive by, all the gorges and the lakes that you drive over top. I mean, my dad and I, he was driving the U-Haul, I was driving my truck, and the amount of times that we'd call each other, be like, "Man, look at this! Man, look at that!" You know, it was an awesome experience, and I can't wait to experience even more of it while I'm here.
So we kind of touched on this, but your career has taken you from Colorado to Eastern Michigan, to a brief stint at Mississippi State even, and now on to West Virginia. What do you think the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself as a player through all these stops?
You know, now with the transfer portal and the way that things are handled at certain places, I don't think anybody's career goes the way that they exactly had mapped it out in their mind. You know, I grew up my entire childhood. I was a Colorado Buffaloes fan from the time I was a baby, and that was my dream and my goal to play there. And you know, I committed there February of my junior year, very early. I was right when Mel Tucker got there. I was like, I know this is the place for me. And you know, the plan was play there for 3 or 4 years, and you know, hopefully have an opportunity at the NFL. But you know, things just didn't work out, and I've kind of been all over the country. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is, again, not everything's going to go the way that you want it to, but just to, you know, never give up. And, you know, adversity sucks, but it's a part of life. And if you can learn to deal with it like I have at a very young age, I think, you know, it's just helped me mature so much. You know, I don't feel like I'm at the maturity level that a lot of 23-year-olds are because of a lot of the stuff that I've went through. So, as hard as some of it's been, it's also been some of the biggest blessings that's ever happened to me because it's helped shape me into the man that I am today.
Yeah, and we talked off camera about this, and you gave me the go-ahead, so we're going to get into it just real quick. Basically, you did what any man would in this situation, the way I look at this. And unfortunately, when the media gets a hold of something and they don't have all the context, it can make and you're the big bad football player here, right? And that's kind of what they were doing with this. You got into a fight where you were at Colorado and were arrested, I believe you said. Were you actually arrested for this?
I spent a total of 21 days in jail for it. Yes, sir.
Unbelievable. And so you were telling me off camera that somebody was trying to mess with your girl's drink and you took care of that. I don't see anything wrong here.
It's unfortunately it's a much longer story than that, and I'm not going to get into a lot of the specifics because the family of the kid that it happened with, they've dealt with things in a certain manner where I don't want to get into a lot of the details. But yeah, long story short, it was after we played USC my true sophomore year, and my best friend since I was 5 years old. We played in high school together, then at CU together. He caught his first touchdown, and he was a true freshman. And so we were out. We were having a good time. We was out with some of the football buddies. My girlfriend was there with some of her friends, and yeah, long story short, some bad stuff happened, and I defended my girlfriend, who I'm still with to this day, 5.5 years strong. And it unfortunately, thank you.
Doesn't happen enough these days.
Yeah, unfortunately, everything happened the way that it was, and I was kind of, I was the local kid that for a long time was heralded as like the next one on the offensive line, stuff like that, and had a lot of expectations behind me. So I think once the media was able to kind of spin that narrative that the kid that everybody was hoping all these things for ended up messing up big time. It took a turn that I don't think it would have if I wasn't who I was, unfortunately. But again, it's it's part of that adversity that I talked about. That is the single greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Right.
I got kind of comfortable at Colorado. I started once COVID happened, I gained a little weight. I was close to family, so I would kind of just be able to go run home to them and anything that happened. And it forced me to, my one offer in the portal then because of everything was at Eastern Michigan. And so it forced me to move across the country, live on my own, learn how to deal with that stuff by myself, obviously with my parents in the background. And I can't thank my parents and my little brother and my girlfriend. And I mean, the support system I have behind me is unlike any other. So they definitely made that transition a lot easier, but having to deal with a lot of that stuff on my own, I couldn't go home that weekend to get a home cooked meal. And so it allowed me to mature and handle that stuff on my own. And like I said, if I had to do it over again, I'd do it 10 times out of 10.
Awesome to hear that, man. I totally understand what you're going through. I know what it's like. So I really appreciate that you were able to share that. And
no doubt.
You know what? You people make mistakes when they're young. Even some people may argue that violence isn't the answer in certain scenarios, but in the day and age where women are, unable to even play sports by themselves, I think that, men standing up for women, it can't be a better time for that. So I don't want to get political, but I appreciate that, man. I really personally, it means a lot to me that you're that kind of guy. So, and that's the kind of hard edge that Rich Rod is going to appreciate. Right.
Yes, sir.
And that's the way I look at it. So, one thing about your Eastern Michigan career is you were multi-positional and you played a ton of snaps, over 1,000 snaps there.
Yes, sir.
Where do you feel most comfortable, and what have the coaches talked to you about? Do you have an idea of where you're going to play, or are they going to see where you fit best and just get the best 5 out there?
I think it's the latter. I don't think there's a specific plan. I think I feel most comfortable at center. I like having the ball in my hands. I like being the one that controls everything and stuff like that. I look at myself as a good leader in that regard and somebody that, the guys can follow, especially now as, a super old dude, a 6-year senior. There's not a ton of those left in college football.
No. But
I'm at a point in my career, I still want to have an opportunity to play at the next level if that's available. And so I'm not.
See why not.
So I'm not going to be too picky. If they need me at guard, great. If they need me at center, awesome. I don't have too many reservations about either one of them.
That's great, man. That's great. I appreciate that. Another thing about your career is you got a mean streak in you on the offensive line, man. Got to have that these days.
Have to.
What is it about offensive line you think that allows you to get that aggression out, man? I went back all the way to 2018 and watching some Rivals footage of you. You've come a long way technique wise, dude. Your head used to get so far out in front of your feet. That
Yeah.
has completely been erased. How much work have you done on this craft?
A lot, and it all started with my dad. My dad played football at Wyoming for a year, and then at Mesa State College back in Grand Junction. And you brought up the violence part, and my dad preached to me from a very. I mean, he had me in a 3-point stance when I was like 3 years old. I knew my entire life. I can throw a football 60, 65 yards. I've got an arm. I was a pitcher in baseball, but
dude, you're a monster.
Not really built as as you'd like to be for a quarterback or something like that. So I always knew my lane would be on the offensive line. And the thing that he always told me from a young age is the thing that separates you from anybody else is the way that you finish. And so from a young age, I always just take that one extra second to run your feet or whatever it may be. But as far as like the technique and things like that, the high school I went to my freshman year was Grand Junction High School, which is where my dad played, and it was pretty much like a veer and shoot type offense, run reads. We maybe passed the ball 5-6 times a game, so I had no idea how to pass protect. But moving to Denver when I was going into my sophomore year, there's a guy there named Matt McChesney who played for the Dolphins, Jets, and Broncos for 6 years, played offensive line and D-line, and he specializes in O-line, D-line training. And I started going there legit like the week that I moved there and worked out there probably 4 times a week throughout my entire high school career.
Wow.
And just trying, because I always knew that I had the capability to be a really good football player. I mean, as a freshman, I started all 10 games on varsity. Started 5 games at left tackle, the next 5 at center. And so I always knew that there was something special there if I really worked at it. And, again, it's just something that my parents instilled in me at a young age, was just to work my ass off. I grew up in a blue collar family. My grandpa was in the military. My grandma grew up on the dairy farm. We're not a lot. I didn't come from, a trust fund or a lot of money or anything like that. The people that I've been surrounded with had to work their ass off for what they have. And I think it'd be disrespectful if I didn't do the same thing with the talent that God's graced me with.
Look at this farm boy right here, man. What is this all about? Dude,
I was 15 years old in that photo. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
That's insane. I was looking at that because whenever you click visit on this, that's what it says. You were 15 years old here, bro.
Yeah.
You look like you talking about growing up on the farm, man. You look like a grown man right here, and I mean, maybe that's a blessing and a curse, but because people probably expect, like you said, people expected a lot out of you early. And that build that you have, I mean, that obviously comes from hard work, but we'll go to break really quick. I got some more questions for Carson. We got to talk about Rich Rod a little bit, a couple other things, guys. Stick around. We'll get to some fan questions too. This is Locked On West Virginia. We'll be right back. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia going to be brought to you by FanDuel, guys. We talk about FanDuel around here because we love it. And the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And whether it's a game-winning shot, breakout player, or whatever, there's never been more or a better time to get in on the action because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip and live with player props, performance trends, same game parlays, and fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Guys, how could a $200 in bonus bets add the excitement? If your first $5 bet hits, easy. You bet on more games, obviously. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to go and sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. It's that simple. Go to FanDuel.com yesterday and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And we are back here with new West Virginia offensive lineman Carson Lee. Segment 2, we always crack a do before we talk about, I know.
Oh, I wish I
I'm
knew that.
sure
I would have went down to the hotel lobby and grabbed my cell phone.
You know
I
what?
wish I
I
would have
thought
known.
about telling you about this because it's tradition now. Like I've been doing it for probably close to 6 months now. People get some enjoyment out of it. It's kind of funny, I guess.
Yeah, I would have joined along if I would have known. I should have done my research.
We always, yeah, you should have done your research, man. I thought you watched me before. No,
That's on me.
Yeah, it's on you, man. Not watching tape. Do you love tape, by the way? I'm a big tape guy.
It's it's one of those, in high school, I was just kind of better than everybody, so I didn't really have to watch much film. But
I love that honesty.
And once you get to college, you realize just how vital it is. There's a few things that you learn is taking care of your body, and then film. It's just being able to, get tells going into a game. It's like, okay, this is what this guy likes to do in this. And it allows you to play the game before the game so that once the snap starts, there's no guessing. It's like, okay, this is what you're going to get and this is what you have to do to beat it. And then it's just up to you whether or not you win the rep for the most part.
WVU Chad wants to know, Carson, have you gotten time to meet the rest of the O-line room yet? And how much importance do you place on chemistry on the O-line?
So not in person. The only guy that I've met, I guess I met two, because I met Walter Youngbear in the training room on my visit, but Landon Livingston was my host on my visit, so he came to dinner with us. But I've been able to introduce myself over text, Snapchat, any of that,
right?
All that type of stuff.
You guys got a group chat, I think, don't you?
I would imagine. I'm not in it yet. I think just because I'm not officially there.
Yeah, you'll be in it.
Yeah, but I haven't been able to meet a ton of the guys personally yet. But as far as chemistry on the offensive line, I learned that really quickly. When I got to Cherry Creek, there was, I think, the other four starters had started there for at least a year. And so just getting there, seeing how much importance that, we had O-line dinners every single Friday night, just the importance of being around each other, getting to know each other outside of the game, where you're from, what types of things do you believe in, all that type of stuff. And I think that's why football is so special, is you get to have relationships with people from all walks of life, every economic background, every political background, all that type of stuff. And so I think just getting to know the guys and learning how to play together, learning how each other communicate, I think it's one of the most vital things that you can be, because if you can move as one, if you're all wrong, you're all right. And
that's true.
And so it's just one of those, I think, chemistry along the offensive line is vital to the success of the team for sure.
So obviously you went to the portal in late April. You chose Mississippi State. You stayed there for the spring, decided it wasn't for you. Do you want to go into the nuances of what made that decision what it was?
To be honest, not really. I respect those guys a lot over there. I created some great relationships, but just unfortunately, with the way that college football is now, money comes into play and a lot of that stuff. And, I've got my theories. I've heard theories from other people and from other coaches that I know. One of the guys that I've stayed in contact with a lot over the years was the offensive line coach I committed to at Colorado, who's now at Alabama. His name's Chris Kapilovic. And we talked, and he gave some of his insight. I'm not going to get into the weeds, but
right.
Let's just, it didn't go down the way that I'd expected it to. But I wish those guys the best of luck, and
sure.
I hope they have a good season. So
just covered it, just you went there, it didn't work out, things happen. In this day and age, the great thing about this is you can make a decision for yourself.
Exactly.
Before, you're locked in over there, right? And now you're not. So the portal does benefit people too.
No doubt.
And I think, that's why I've actually had this conversation with a few players that were so grateful that they came during the spring, because you can make that choice now, whether it's for you or it's for not, whether it's not. So I think it's a good thing in your situation here that you get to come to a blue collar place. Obviously, Rich Rod is here now. So there's a lot to like about that. Now, obviously, with Rich Rod, you said you were able to sit down and have dinner with him. Was that the only time you got to meet with him, or?
No, I mean, he was, I don't know the reasoning for it, whatever. I mean, there was other guys in that weekend, but he was kind of attached to my hip the whole weekend.
Wow.
And so we got to spend quite a bit of time together. And, I also, fortunately, at Eastern Michigan, 2 years ago, so we played them down at Jacksonville State, and then they came up to Eastern Michigan last year. And so I got to, see the offense, see how things ran. And I mean, it's mental warfare against his teams. I mean, it really is. It's, it's who can last longer. And, in 2022, when we played them, they kicked our ass. I think it was 21-0, and it was not really a competition. And last year we went to,
and they're coming up from FCS.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think part of it was we went into there kind of overlooking them. It's a small town in Alabama, this and that. And then they came up to Eastern last year, and I think we went to double overtime against them and actually won. And so I got to see both sides of the coin. But I have so much respect for Rich Rod and the way that he runs things. And a lot of people might complain about how, he's too tough, he's this. That's what you need in football. You can't have a guy that's in there being soft on you, because if you do, then you're never going to be held accountable for the mistakes that you made. And so for a guy like Rich Rod to be back at West Virginia, I can't wait to be a part of the first year that's going to kick off this thing that hopefully goes on forever. So.
And here's the thing, dude. I don't know if you've been a part of this shit. Actually, I don't think you have. Now that I think about it, you played at Eastern Michigan, which obviously there's a ton of pro teams in Michigan. Even though it's Eastern Michigan, it's on a smaller scale, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
At Colorado, not on a smaller scale, big scale. But you've got the Broncos, you've got everything around. You come to a place like West Virginia where you're going to experience this. There are no pro teams. There is no other Power 4 team. You've got Marshall, which gets a pretty good amount of love, but nowhere near the love the Mountaineers get. Have you thought about that fishbowl effect and what it's going to be like here? Because you'll be here for 1 year, but you'll be remembered forever, especially if you're good.
Yeah. I think it's so cool. I got to experience it somewhat in Mississippi. I know they still have Ole Miss and stuff, so there's another Power 4 team there, but there's no pro team. So I mean, you walk around there, and it's pretty obvious the guys that play football, especially if you're wearing a Mississippi State football shirt, and just the way that the community embraces you, the way they bring you in, the way that they support you. I got to experience that a little bit, but not quite to the scale of even West Virginia. And so I can't wait. My dad's here with me in the hotel right now, and I can't wait tonight we're going to go out and just kind of start learning the town and things like that. And then my mom's going to be flying out here at the end of the week because I'm not able to move into my apartment until June 1st. And so then she's going to help me move in. They just weren't able to coordinate it with their work because my mom's a teacher, so she doesn't get necessarily to choose her time off. But now she's on summer break as of, I believe, Friday. And so she's going to come out here too. And she wasn't able to come on my visit because of her being a teacher as well. So I think that's been another awesome thing too, is just like the coaches, when I committed, I've had my dad call my mom before I did it so that she could kind of still be a part of it and all that kind of stuff.
That's great.
But the way the coaches have embraced her and said, we can't wait for you to get out here. We're going to give you your own type of official visit type of thing and stuff. It's awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I didn't know they would do that.
I cannot wait.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, super cool.
Oh, yeah, that means a lot. And I mean, look, you got to put in the extra effort for the guys. Listen, I'll go into it. Let's go to break really quick. This is a 6-second break. We'll be right back. Okay, and we are back here, Locked On West Virginia, in segment 3 with Carson Lee. That rhymes. Anytime it rhymes, I get all excited. I'm just a regular guy, man. So, we were talking about, we're about to talk about you on tape, because there's a couple of things about your game that I really like, man, and I would like to get into really quick before we move on to one or two other questions before we get done.
Okay.
So your punch is really good. Your hand placement, your punch, very good. Where does that also come from your dad, the technique, or was that Eastern Michigan? Because your hand, man, you got some violent hands.
Yeah, I think there's I can attribute that to a lot of things. For one, obviously, like my dad saying, the way you separate yourself is the way you finish, and so it kind of just gets you into that aggressive mindset.
I mean,
but I've never. Yeah, I think honestly though, being around the block so much, around so many different coaches, I've got to pick up so many different things, technique wise, this and that, and kind of mold it all into my own. It's awesome having one coach because you get used to the way that they teach it. You get used to this, you get used to that, but you don't get the experience of having somebody else's opinion. And so for me, I think this is going to be Coach Bicknell is going to be my 7th offensive line coach in college alone. So
that's a lot.
Now that 7 is not ideal either. So I'm not going to sit here and act like it is. But like I said, I've been able to kind of pick different parts of the things that I've found that work for me and kind of combine them all into where now going into my final season, I just think I've got so much experience and so much knowledge about certain things. I just can't wait to put that on the field and put that to use.
So a couple other fan questions really quick, man. I know you got to go to dinner. We'll be down here.
No rush. You're all good.
Cool. Kevin Barney says, Carson, you ready to burn some couches? You must hate Pitt to be a Mountaineer. Welcome.
Again, one of those things I heard from the McAfee show is about them burning couches and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I've gotten a pretty decent look into things too. One of my best friends growing up, we played football together 5th through 8th grade and then competed in high school together, was Cole Taylor. And our dads are still really close. Yeah, I've known him since I
remember that now.
I've known him since I was probably 8 or 9. We played basketball against each other all throughout elementary school, middle school, and then we also played on the same middle school football team. And so I've got to pick his brain. And then also one of the guys that actually helped with my move to Denver and just was Ken Marchio, Nico's dad. And so I've known the Marchios for a little while as well. So I've been able to pick their brains and stuff like that. But no, I can't wait to see the couches burning. And then, as far as Pitt, one of my best friends from Eastern Michigan just transferred there to play defensive ends. So me and him have been going back and forth about week 3?
Yeah.
Week 3. We just can't wait to duke it out.
Do you know about the score and the date? Have you heard about that yet?
No.
So whenever Rich Rod and Pat McAfee lost to Pitt in 2007, that was a 13-9 score. It's very legendary around here. Pitt, anytime Pitt fans wants to insult a West Virginia fan, they just type 13-9, right? Knocked West Virginia out of the national championship game. They won, they were in the national championship game. Pat McAfee missed 2 kicks. He got all those death threats. He was obviously separated from West Virginia for a few years because of that. Rich Rod went to Michigan, it was a huge blow up for us, it's the single biggest bad thing that's ever happened to our university, period. That was 13-9, right? So the first game against the Power 4 team at West Virginia will be played on 9/13 against Pitt for Rich Rod.
That's awesome.
So, it's one of those things that's like sometimes fate has a weird thing to it where you lose the game 13-9, you're gone for 17 years, you go around the block, and you finally get your dream job back, which you should have never left in the first place. He openly admits, and it's on 9/13.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't know about that. And, I'm going to kind of go off on not a tangent, but speaking of full circle moments, it was kind of funny bringing up McAfee again is, when Rich Rod took the job, he put something like, if you're a guy in the transfer portal, like if you're a dog, whatever, like hit us up. So I actually emailed his CFO and was like, I would love to come to West Virginia. I'd love to be a part of this. Well, this was back in December. Obviously never heard a response. I get it. They're busy, but full circle now in April, once the transfer portal window opens up, I end up here. So it's pretty funny how 5 months ago I was sending an email saying that I wanted to come play for Rich Rod, and then ended up happening. So pretty cool.
I could make a whole video out of that,
Yeah.
Former West Virginia player emailed Pat McAfee CFO to play. Oh my gosh, I could make a headline out of that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I completely forgot about it, and then I remembered it for some reason. I read it off to my mom and dad. We were sitting at dinner. My little brother was there as well, and they were like, "Oh my god!" Like, could you imagine? Like,
crazy.
Yeah. So the whole time, then my dad's like, "Well, imagine if you would have just ended up there in December." So yeah, it's pretty cool full circle moment as well.
Ranger Buck wants to know, have you watched any Zach Frazier film, the center for the Steelers, obviously the great center for West Virginia, All-American?
Yeah, nothing specific, but I know, I don't know Zach, but I know of Zach. We went to a couple camps together in high school, competed against each other. So I've always known Zach from afar. And so, I remember.
Was he that good always?
Yeah. He was pretty incredible. That was one, again, I never watched his film, but being at those camps, it was one of those guys that you kind of just watch without them knowing that you're watching, just to kind of pick up on a few things. No, he's always been a stud. And so I kind of lost track of how things were going for him in college. And then I was talking to Cole one night actually, and he's like, he's like, do you know Zach Frazier? I was like, yeah, I know the name. Why? And so he kind of just like got into him. And so then just seeing his success and getting drafted by the Steelers, man, that's super cool. And, it'd be pretty cool if I could replicate some of that. That'd be ideal, man. For sure.
So I love that you're gunning for that center spot, because I think obviously, and it's kind of funny that Landon obviously hosted you on your visit. Yeah. You guys can be kind of friendly rivals through camp, and the best man win. I think that's what's going to be great about this room is the best 5 guys are going to get on the field, man.
Exactly.
And I'm excited to see what that looks like. So, have you had any suggestions about where to eat tonight, or do you have a place picked out?
I think my dad said that he texted Coach Dressler, the assistant O-line coach, and he gave a couple. I don't remember exactly. I think one Varsity Inn was one of them.
Gotcha.
And then I don't remember the others that he sent, but I know he sent a few places to go and check out over the next couple days.
One of the all name team people I have here, one of my longtime listeners now, is Smack the Devil. Carson, you appear to be an intelligent and driven young man. Very happy to welcome you as a Mountaineer. Looking forward to seeing you succeed and wish you the best. So you're getting
Awesome.
a lot of love on here, man. Have you Jeff
thank you,
wants to
sir.
know, have you gotten any pepperoni rolls yet?
No, I've not, but that sounds incredible. I look forward to trying that.
That's definitely the state food, pepperoni rolls, and there's a great history behind it. It's basically tied to coal miners,
Awesome.
because it was cheap, and also they wouldn't spoil, baked inside a pepperoni roll is fast. So they would put the mozzarella and the cheese in a roll, and I'm sure it was probably a little more primitive than it is now.
Mhm.
But as far as like all the dressings and everything people put on them now, but so that's kind of the genesis of that. So it's pretty cool. You get to check out a pepperoni roll. They're actually really good.
Yeah, I will.
It's not like
me,
the
I don't think you
gas
look at
station
me and think that I don't eat pepperoni rolls. So yes, I will be giving one or two
Right.
of those a try for sure.
All right. So you mentioned Coach Dressler, man. Has he talked about Coach Trickett and everything he's learned from him?
Has he what? Sorry, because something kind of broke up there a little bit.
Oh, have you talked to Coach Dressler about all the things he learned from Coach Rick Trickett, the great offensive line coach that he played, or I think he played for as well, but obviously coached with for so many years?
I haven't been able to talk to him about that type of stuff, just because of how fast this all moves. It's more so just like, hey, everything good. Do you need any help with the moving situation? But like again, the coaches will be there on Tuesday, and so I think I'll have plenty of opportunities to get to talk to him about that. But no, getting to meet his son, Coach Trickett, who's here now, and all those guys, I just can't wait to play for him. They all seem, obviously they're going to be hard asses, and that's expected. But they all just seem like such great, down to earth dudes. I can't wait for it.
So PFF has you rated as one of the best in pass protection around last year. You got a almost 75 grade in pass pro, man. And I'm just curious, you'll have one sack over almost 400 reps. That's elite.
Mhm.
What's your approach when it comes to pass pro, and how do you stay so consistent in keeping the quarterback clean?
I think the thing that it's been hammered in my mind since I was young is never lose inside. And so
That's great. That's great.
I tend to underset at times just to make sure that I don't. But I think as long as my goal always is just to stay half a man inside the guy, and I think as long as I do that, then if he just wants to keep going outside, just take him there.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm not super I'm about 6'2.5", 6'3". I've got a really wide lower body, so if the guy decides to rush down the middle, I've always been able to anchor and stuff like that. So I think that's the biggest thing is I hardly ever lose to the inside, and that's when guys get in trouble a lot. And so I've just hammered that in my mind since I was a young kid. Like, never let that happen.
Yeah, I think obviously one of the big things today's pass rushers, the speed to power, and it gets done well. Somebody that can do that well is tough to deal with, and if you can anchor, man, that makes it a lot easier to deal with that. Then you just kind of have to worry more about the speed aspect of that. I don't envy, and you guys are going to get tested, man. Jamoy Robinson, I don't know if you've seen much of what he's done, but he's a dude, and like. I talked to people, and he made some dudes look silly over the spring. So I'm excited to see, just these battles are going to be fun to watch, man.
Yeah,
so,
I can't wait.
Okay. Do you have anything that you want to get out there to Mountaineer Nation? Anything that you want to say, anything that you want to make heard or anything like that?
No, nothing crazy. I do want the fans to know though, if you see me out in public, like, come say hi. Like I love meeting people. I love getting to know people. I can't wait to get ingratiated in the community and get to know what this place is about. I have a pretty decent understanding about the coal miners and the blue collar work, and I respect the hell out of that. And so I hope that I can just give that community what they deserve and bring a lot of wins here. And there's nothing else much to be said other than go Mountaineers and let's kick some ass this year and eat shit Pitt.
I love it, man. Love it. So you got a lot of compliments here, and I'm just going to run through them because we got hundreds of people watching we got almost 300 here on YouTube. We got another few hundred over on X, another few hundred over on TikTok, so we'll try to roll through some of these here. But um, Carson from Burdette says, "Let's go eat shit Pitt." Whip Hero says West Virginia has been sending some good offensive line to the NFL lately. What do you know about Wyatt Milam, who's a Jag? I didn't know this was a question. Sorry. I hope Carson can continue sending West Virginia O linemen to the draft. Do you know who Wyatt Milam is?
I do know who he is. Yeah, and again,
Okay.
I don't know much about him. But yeah, I think he was drafted in the third round,
Yeah.
second round, something. Yeah, so I know who he is, and I've heard he's a great player, and hopefully I get the opportunity to pick his brain a little bit.
Welcome to Mountaineer Nation, says Stanley Metz, a longtime listener, Kenny, my buddy, Mountaineer there with Kenny, Carson Lee. Welcome in, man. Let's go Mountaineers. Take me home country roads. Silva Mark says, it might be the camera angle, but your hands look huge, man. Dylan Lester, I grew up in Caledonia, Mississippi, near Starkville, but family is from Ocean, West Virginia, lifelong West Virginia fans. Cool to see a connection with a Mississippi State guy. We'll be rooting for you. Cool.
Awesome.
You're going to love Law School Hill, eat shit Pitt, and hit the like button. I appreciate that, Eric. So a lot of fans enjoying. Make sure you go follow him. What's your handle, man? I've got it right here.
I think on both Instagram and Twitter, it's Carson Lee 75.
That's it. Really simple. No spaces, no anything like that.
No,
At
sir.
Carson Lee 75. So do you know if you're going to get to keep that number?
No, I believe it's retired because of Sam Huff. I think so.
Idiot. I'm such an idiot. Of course it is because that's Sam Huff.
Yeah. So no, but I wore that number because of my dad. That's what he wore in high school. So I started wearing that my freshman year of high school. Wore it all the way through. Wore it at Colorado. Wore it at Eastern Michigan, and then it wasn't available at Mississippi State this last spring. So I wore a different number, but it's my last semester of college football, man. I just want to play ball. So whatever number they give me, I'm going to make it look the best that I can, and hopefully give a number for Mountaineer Nation to remember for a long time.
Maybe it'll get retired someday.
Hey, you never know.
Last question here, because this is actually one I was going to ask you here. Is it just a myth, or is Rich Rod really as intense as people say?
On the field, yes. For sure. Again, I've never been coached by him, but I remember last year after we beat him in double overtime, we beat them because they were down at about the 1 yard line and their center snapped the ball over the quarterback's head about 20 yards. The ball just kept rolling and rolling. It was unbelievable. And so let's just say he was a little fired up after that. So I got to see it. But as far as when we went to dinner and in his office, he's so genuine. He's so down to earth. And, the way that he even just with my mom over the phone was with her, and the way that he was with my dad. Yeah. He just a guy that I can't wait to play for. And, his intensity, I hope that he's intense. That's how my dad coached me. That's how my high school coach coached me. The guys that I still have really good relationships with, and, guys that will be invited to my wedding and stuff like that have all been the coaches that have coached me the hardest. Those guys are the people that I think I succeed the best under because, if I mess up, I don't need to be coddled. I don't need to be this. I need to be told what I did wrong, why I did it wrong, and, to get my ass together. And so, I can't wait.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been really fun interviewing you. One of the best I've ever had, man. I mean that, I
appreciate it. Thank
you
so
very
much.
Personable, very, very smart, great head on your shoulders. So we're going to be rooting for you like crazy, man. Definitely we'll keep in touch. Stay with me for 30 seconds after the show, if you don't mind.
No worries.
Guys, make sure you guys hit Carson up over on X and on Instagram, follow his story. We'll keep track of him as we move through the summer, as we find out little tidbits through interviews and different things where he's at in the pecking order. We'll definitely keep track of that. Hopefully he hits that starting lineup, guys. I've got a lot of faith in him. Not a lot of guys bringing 1,100 snaps to the table. Not a lot of guys with the kind of hand violence this dude has and that can anchor like he does. So be looking forward to seeing that, Carson. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And again, thank you guys for listening, and go Mountaineers.
All right, guys. Appreciate y'all for joining in. And don't forget, guys, this episode of Locked On West Virginia was brought to you by FanDuel, but also for your second listen of the day, go check out the Portal Report over on YouTube. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings, and you can be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape, which is pretty much every day now. And you can find the Portal Report on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, Locked On Portal. All right, guys. For Carson, for me, It's been a great weekend. Hope you had a good one too. They're reporting on Tuesday. We're going to start football back. We'll see you then. For this episode's over, and we're out of here.